Hello, Kotakuinaction. Richard Lewis here. I meant to make this video like a week ago or something, after one of my other videos made it to the front page of the Kotakuinaction subreddit, but I've been working a lot of events and doing various things, so I didn't have time. Now. Got a nice quiet week, so I thought I would sort of address some of the questions that came up as a result of my work being presented to you. So first of all, the reason I'm making a video is I can't actually directly interact with you on Reddit because I'm permanently banned from Reddit. Now, there's a lot of misinformation going around about why this is, but I don't really want to go over that and make this video about old news. There's other videos on my channel if you're interested. The bottom line is I got embroiled in a quite, I guess, heated exchange with some moderators on one of the bigger subreddits. In fact, the largest non-default in terms of traffic, the League of Legends subreddit. The moderators there were trying to remove my work and constantly censoring my work. We were already on a bad kind of footing, and then they would continually react to me posting to people that were basically calling me a liar and saying my work had no merit, that I was tabloid, whatever. And I would, of course, respond to that because I hate this idea that you just have to sit there, like a shrinking violet and not respond to abuse when people throw it at you because you're the more known quantity. I've never really understood that argument. Anyway, eventually they brought in some new, very social justice warrior focused moderators that wanted to make a name for themselves. I mean, to give you an idea of the kind of policies they wanted to put in, the word retarded is now banned blanketly, across League of Legends. That was one of their ideas. It just seems incredibly stupid to politicize a subreddit in that way. But anyway, they wanted a high-profile scalp. That was me. And of course, during the time I got banned, perhaps conveniently, I was already writing an article about their relationship with Riot Games, the developer that makes the game. Now, a lot of people have said there's no relation. I made all this stuff up, and I think that's demonstrably not true by the articles that I've published. Indeed, recently they just announced that an ex-Riot employee who used to be a moderator before he got a job at Riot is now coming back to the moderator team. Nothing to see here, folks, of course. So anyway, that's why I'm banned from Reddit. What I will admit is because it would be disingenuous of me to not present some of the other things that went on. And this is 2 years or more old. When they first started removing my work from the subreddit without any valid reason, I did look up who these people were. I googled some usernames and I went on Twitter and postulated, would they act the same way if people knew who they were, which apparently is a cardinal sin. I mean, I'm a slightly older guy. I'm not really savvy with a lot of the sort of values of the internet for this new modern generation that use it. So the idea of what people call doxing hadn't even occurred to me. I'd never even heard the term until I looked up the information and queried whether or not it would be better in the public domain. I still believe that anybody that has the influence to, what's the best way of phrasing it, the influence to kind of push back on someone's career, ultimately to influence their livelihood, how they make a living. I don't think you can have accountability and an anonymity. I don't think that works as a concept. So perhaps that does make me a bad person, but it's something I genuinely believe. Anyway, for the longest time, actually, I've been quite fascinated by the GamerGate movement. A lot of people in that thread asked what my stance was on GamerGate and how I felt about it, had I spoke out about it at the time. So just to clarify, when I saw GamerGate coming out, going right back to the original Zoe Quinn story, I was doing a show with a popular Twitch streamer called Destiny and a good friend called Chris Chan. We used to do a show called Unfiltered, and we touched upon the topic then. Total Biscuit used to come on Unfiltered quite regularly. Me and John were very good foils for each other, and we talked about this. We actually talked about the Zoe Quinn incident, and at the time my viewpoint was that I don't really care about the sexual proclivities, the sexual relationships that anyone in the scene is in. I don't really think it's necessarily any of my business. Once it starts to influence something relating to the business, then it's a matter of public interest. I don't really think that applied to the original Zoe Quinn story, and I don't think the sort of slut shaming and all that nonsense that seemed to originally come through in the very early days of GamerGate, I didn't really think that any of that was necessary. I wasn't really interested in it, but it did bring up some super important questions, which was the ethical aspects of it. And I absolutely said, if you're having sex with people and they're in a position to give you a positive review or help your business out, this really needs to be disclosed. In fact, there's a common practice, which I'm sure you now, as the kind of media watchdogs of the internet, will be aware of, where you just recuse yourself from a story, you declare an interest. This has happened to me multiple times in my career. The esports industry is very, very small. There is a lot of nepotism and cronyism that goes on. And I'm kind of, I walk a tightrope. I mean, again, I'll be honest about it, lest anyone see through it anyway. I do walk a tightrope. You know, for example, I work for companies like ESL, DreamHack, Gfinity, you know, Faceit, you name it. And I also simultaneously write about them, and I probably write things they would rather I wasn't writing. So it's very difficult to sort of balance that tightrope out. Would I, in the interests of getting a job with them, like a freelance appearance and earning that fee, would I hold a story back? Well, to date I haven't, and they know that, but obviously I have to declare these things publicly. And in fact, when some stories have come up where it might look like I was being utilized for PR purposes, I've told my editor I can't really do it. I have an existing relationship with these people. I recuse myself from the story, and we refer it to another journalist. Now, what I noticed was this wasn't happening at all in the games industry, and in particular in this sort of Zoe Quinn case. So I was immediately interested in Gamergate. What I would say is the other turn off immediately was the hashtag. Right, hashtag activism makes me fucking sick, really. There's a lot of things that's wrong with modern internet culture, and I think hashtag activism is one of them. Freudian slip there, drop Activision's name into it. But anyway, the hashtag activism is something that I don't really particularly like. I think it often cheapens a lot of movements. I think it encourages the sort of distillation of a political ideology into one easily kind of you can just encapsulate everything, and no true political movement can sort of be like that. No true push for change can be like that. I actually think this was one of the things that caused a lot of problems for Gamergate at the start, and that is that you did have a few people operating on the lunatic fringe. I think that's absolutely true. And of course, because it was a hashtag, you weren't able to distance yourself from them and say, no, they're using the hashtag, but it ain't like that. And actually, that gave the detractors a lot of ammunition to fire. But just in general, whatever the hashtag is, I don't give a fuck. Some guy shoots a lion, yeah, is it bad? Whatever, yeah. But I want to voice a fleshed out opinion about it. And I want us to have a meaningful discussion. I don't think the hashtag at the end of a fucking sentence is really the way to go about things. So I was immediately kind of put off by that. But the more I watched what was happening in terms of the media, I did realize, actually, we've got a big fucking problem here. By the time the mailing list got leaked publicly, which was a fucking outrage. That it's an outrage that didn't lead to a far bigger outcry in the mainstream media. Indeed, I remember an incident in American politics where something similar happened, I think in 2012. People were fucking fired. There was talk about jail. It was unbelievable. Obviously, it's games journalism, arguably not as important as politics, or politics is a big load of bullshit at the best of times. But the mainstream media didn't even pick up on this at all. They weren't interested, and that was because obviously a lot of these people had ties with the people that were in the list, or they were in the list, and it was just bad for business to talk honestly about it, that we've got a nepotism and cronyism problem in games journalism. So that was when I really started getting interested in it, and I wanted to come out and be very vocal about my support for it, that I did believe it was about ethics in journalism. I'd never got on board with the idea that Gamergate was a movement that harassed women, because for every time there was talk of this happening, I saw plenty of examples of professional victims actually feigning instances of harassment or not being able to qualify where the harassment was coming from, and it looked very dubious to me. But then again, on the flip side, you had these social justice warrior types that really were going after people. And again, just to tie this in on Unfiltered, the show I did, Destiny, the streamer who's on there, and again, I've known Steven a long time. I think he's a great guy. I think he's got a brilliant mind. Really enjoy doing shows with him. This is somebody who had his Twitter hacked. He had dick pics. I made me laugh about it. He had dick pics leaked on the internet, and SRS, the shit Reddit says, the notoriously extreme feminist subreddit. I should even go as far as to say extreme leftist, extreme progressive, whatever term you deem appropriate. They were happy actually to help distribute these, to talk about him as being, I think because he'd kind of said some derogatory things about the woman who hacked his Twitter. That's what led to it. Something about her being ugly or something. They said that it was completely fair game, and in fact they even housed the images of his genitalia. Were happy to have them crop up. They also routinely harassed him by going after his sponsors every time he tweeted or said anything that they don't like. It was a real, close look at just how extreme these people can be. And ever since then, I was really cognizant of how often this was happening. And all the harassment that I saw, very well, not all of it obviously, but the vast majority was coming from these progressive types. They were going after people's jobs, people's families, people's partners. It was frightening. And it was going unchecked. And in fact, not only unchecked, it was being supported by a lot of these progressive left publications that wear their agenda on their sleeve, and no one says a goddamn thing about it. So by this point, I guess, they say, buy curious or whatever. I was GG curious, right? Like, what can I do at this point to sort of help right these clear wrongs that are going on, and this real ugly bias in the media, and just the way that the whole GamerGate incident was reported. Now, I was like, okay, I'll come out and I'll be pro GamerGate, but actually a lot of people in the esports community were like, just don't do that. Just do not do that. I spoke to a lot of big names. I mean, people and mainstream YouTubers as well, and other gaming people. And they just said, don't do that. If you do that, that is career suicide. Like, honestly, you're not big enough, basically, is what I was told. You're not big enough. You're not popular enough to come out as pro GamerGate and survive. You'll be fucked. You'll be absolutely hauled over the coals. No publication will touch you. It's if you say the words pro GamerGate, like, just kiss it goodbye. It's all over. It's all gone. Now, I didn't like the idea of sort of being dictated to in this way about what I could and couldn't say. But ultimately, I've had brushes in the past. I'm a quite controversial and divisive figure at the best of times. So I thought, how many battles can I fight, right? So I sort of just distanced myself. And I guess I went for the sort of blanket phrase, which you'll hear a lot, and I know you've heard this a lot, is that I'm neither pro-GamerGate nor anti-GamerGate. I think we need to have a sensible discussion about ethics in journalism, but I'm totally against the harassment of women. Now, all of these things are true, and you will hear this said multiple times. It's just a safe way of saying I'm more GamerGate than anti-GamerGate, but I'm too afraid to say that I'm GamerGate because we're all seeing what's going on. In fact, back when I had a Reddit account, I used to post in the Kotakuinaction subreddit, and people would all say the same thing. Dude, you're using your real name and you're posting here? And I'd be like, well, yeah, and what's going to happen? No one's gonna fuck with me for just posting in a subreddit. Well, of course, again, here we all are. We now know that isn't true, and there are no depths to which these people won't stoop to control the narrative and to drive out and harass people that do want to address the genuine issues surrounding the whole GamerGate hashtag. Now, other thing that definitely made me sympathetic and wanting to do more around GamerGate was that I worked as a games reviewer myself. I absolutely knew firsthand. Me and Total Biscuit talked about this on shows together. I absolutely knew firsthand that there was a serious issue with the way reviews were being dealt, and that sometimes reviews would be skewed based on ideology. Sometimes reviews would be overinflated for in certain inducements, and I've seen this in lots of media. You know, film reviews have got a problem as well. You'll often see the press at film and movie junkets, of which I've attended like maybe one or two, and you will see that the press get these little like goodie bags, and you have like this wonderful buffet, and you know, you get your 15 minutes to meet a star, and ooh, isn't it wonderful? And music journalism as well. You know, I mean, I remember back when I used to work for NUS, and I used to be a music journalist. I used to do music reviews. My gimmick was I would always. The gimmick of the column, the review column, was that I would basically be the music elitist. So everything was bad, right? So it was just how bad it was, but everything had a baseline of bad and not as good as it used to be. That was the joke. That was a running joke. But because I was handing out some really savage reviews, all the CD companies that went to NUS and said, look, we'll give you free copies of these CDs for review purposes, and this guy never gives anything a good review. We're going to take them away if that doesn't change. So I've seen it in other instances, but there was nothing like games reviews. Games reviews were unbelievable in the terms that when I used to hand them in, I would give a score, you know, whatever the scoring system for the publication was. And very often, by the time it went to print and made it out into the public domain, my score that I'd awarded it personally had no bearing on the score that was on the publication. I would often talk to my editors about why this would be. There would always be reasons. There would always be reasons for it. And I'm pretty sure they thought we were being pragmatic and sensible. But to me, it was a disgusting affront to consumer rights. But, you know, things that I used to get told, for example, would be, it's the first time we've had a game from this developer, so we absolutely have to give it. We have to boost it. We have to give it an extra 20, or we might not get any other games from them in future. I'm like, okay, I guess that's cool. I think the game's a 60. You're giving it an 80, just so we can maybe get their next game. Someone's going to go out and buy it on the strength of this review, and they're going to get a 60 game, or rather, what I think is a 60 game. It certainly isn't an 80 game, but that was just the nature of the business. By the same token, we used to get approached and offered inducements for positive reviews. Is there anything we could do? I was intrigued by Jim Sterling talking about the Konami boot camp that happened recently. I remember doing something very similar actually when Rage came out. It was exactly that. It was a boot camp. All the reviewers were brought down to their to a place in London. Their studios, their London studio, I think it might have been, had lots of Rage related stuff in it, and we got put in a room with other journalists, and we had to sit there, and it was like, you've got 8 hours of play time to write the review. That was it. They wouldn't send you out an early version or whatever, and then you had to go away, and the review had to be out, obviously, you know, by a set time. And it was a ridiculous situation, and I don't think it was optimal for review purposes. I know while we were down there, it was like, what do you think so far? You know, you're coming up to a really cool, but this is really good. This took us ages, and it was just like they were trying to plan all of this stuff in your head about whether or not you were going to give it a positive review. Basically, they were kind of nudging you towards it by almost this appeal to sympathy for how much work they put into it. And of course, you were looked after very well, but it felt like a very dishonest environment. It didn't feel like an environment that was conducive to the truth. So anyway, all of that was going on. So again, I knew that the games reviews had a problem, and it wasn't being addressed. And the GamerGate movement did seem a very good way of addressing that. Now, with all of this said, it was incredibly hard to really sort of get to the crux of the matter, because every time you tried to write something that was even vaguely sympathetic, it would get slapped down. Now, I took a job. I was working for the Daily Dot, and again, I was doing the esports coverage there. I was a senior writer for their esports department. As some of you will know, I recently left, and a lot of people had questions about, why leave, because it was a winning formula. I still maintain that section has the best journalists in esports. We break all the big stories. We're the only one that's really querying and questioning and sort of poking and probing all of this bizarre and sometimes sinister stuff that's going on in esports, rather than just following the narrative that's going to get everyone paid. And there's millions and millions going into esports every day, and that section is completely free from politics, by the way. It's run by a great editor. He's called Kevin Morris. One of the best bosses I've had in any line of work I've ever worked in. But the problems really started arising when I wanted to write about other stuff. So this was the flashpoint that really made me want to leave, and this is why I did leave. Some of you, again, will recall I wrote an article. It was I did an interview with the guys over at subreddit Cancer. Now, Reddit is a big forum. It's hugely important in terms of internet culture. But there's this one little sort of clique of guys who were dedicated to pointing out, mod abuse, admin abuse, whenever corporatism sort of enters into the subreddit and pushes back against the original ideas on which Reddit is conceived. And I did this interview with him, and one of the mods was called GamerGate Fan, right? Now, I handed in my copy and to an editor who shall remain nameless, and when the article went out, there was a lot of bizarre things in the article. I mean, first off, it was published with an admission on my behalf that I'd doxed people and I'd released public information, all of this stuff that just wasn't true. Like, it's never happened. And my own publication put that out there about me. And I was like, well, you didn't even consult with me about this. So it was quite clear, I think, straight away that because the piece obviously had some leanings towards a particular side of an argument, they didn't like it. For example, it was hugely against Ellen Powell and her sort of reign. It was against the banning of fat people hate, which I still think that's, I'm a tubby guy myself. I don't mind. People want to take photos of me and say I need to lose some weight. Fuck it, do it. Like, I'm not. I get that every day in esports anyway. So I thought this was a little bit, strange that he was picking apart stuff. Like, apparently taking a photo that was on Imgur of the Imgur staff and putting it there and saying, look how fat these guys are, and even their dog is fat. The editor I was giving this piece to, he said, that's harassment, mate. That's harassment. I'm like, what? What world are we living in where that's harassment? But anyway, so one of the mods we interviewed was a chap called GamerGate Fan, and I read through the article that made it public, and I didn't put this in, and they changed it, and there was a line, and it said, after the quote from GamerGate Fan, it said, Gamergate is, of course, the anti-feminist movement that has been on the internet and has caused harassment, whatever the thing was. I was like, what the fuck is this? I don't even think this. I don't believe any of that shit. And they put it in there. I was like, what the fuck is this? I went to the editor. I was like, why are we putting that in? And he was like, oh, well, it's to give context to Gamergate. Obviously, we've covered Gamergate a lot. It doesn't give context. First, it's a fucking out-and-out lie. To define Gamergate as an anti-feminist movement is fucking ridiculous. Second of all, there's no need for the sentence to be in the article. He's called Gamergate Fan. That's his username. We don't need to explain what the usernames mean. There was another guy in there called Dr. Anus MD. We didn't put like, the anus is, the hole in your ass. Like, we didn't do that, right? So why the fuck were we explaining what Gamergate was and explaining it wrong? So I was really furious about this. I can tell I'm getting a blood vessel popping in my bald head while I'm talking about it now. And it was a real stumbling block for me. After that point, I became really disillusioned. I tried to write several other pieces, and the Daily Dot didn't want to run them because it didn't really fit in with politics, the politics that they wanted to put out there. And I thought it was really sad. I'd had no problems in the esports section whatsoever. I think the Daily Dot's a great publication. I think some of the journalism it's done is awesome. But I can't get on board with the idea of preventing one of your journalists that's contributed for a year some big stories. I'm not tooting my own horn, and now I want to write about something else, and you want to twist my words, you want to not publish it at all. It was really upsetting, frankly. So that was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back and made me want to think about getting a change and writing maybe for a publication that would at least indulge. I'm not saying my ideas are right. I'm not saying my political view is right. But if you got to just be open. A serious publication will publish both sides of the argument. And it really opened my eyes, actually, to what was going on, which is there is this progressive left bias in a lot of these online publications, and it's out there solely for the purposes of reinforcing a narrative, and reinforcing a narrative actually that when you boil it down at the lowest common denominator, it sells. That's what it's about. It's financially driven. That's why Anita Sarkeesian isn't really this arch feminist that people think she is. She is an avatar for an idea, which sells. Because let's think about where the sort of social justice warrior movement emanates from. Ironically, it's people of privilege themselves, right? That want to push this idea of patriarchy and everyone's using their privilege against minority groups and all of that. It's actually the privileged and the relatively wealthy. It's middle class white people that are pushing this movement, and as a result, they've got disposable income. And trust me, they're upwardly mobile. They buy things. They have a high level of engagement. They'll donate to Patreons. They'll do all sorts of stuff in the desire to serve what they see as a good cause. And that isn't to say they're bad people. I think they're incredibly misguided. Just in general, but I suppose they mean well. I mean, in a lot of ways, they are the human manifestation of the phrase, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. So anyway, I did just want to clear all of that up because I've never really spoke openly about it. Now that I haven't got a job to lose, and I'm kind of between gigs, and I'm pretty sure the next publication I work for, this isn't going to care. They won't care about any of this trivial nonsense that's going on the internet right now. I feel like I can be open for the first time really about it, and that in itself tells you really all you need to know about the movement. That being anti-GG will carry no stigma whatsoever, will garner support, can be potentially lucrative, but coming out and saying that you support and sympathize with the GamerGate movement will get you harassed and all sorts of other stuff. So just to end, I just wanted to say, obviously, thanks a lot for upvoting my last video, which was a talk on journalism. You probably saw it and saw that I had a few little digs at mainstream gaming journalism. I do feel quite passionately about ethics in journalism. I think sometimes the desire to be ethical has probably led me to be a tad extreme in how I present myself and to get involved in arguments. But you've got to be terrier-like in this sort of a business, and of course it's very hard when people are gunning for your job every 48 hours whenever the next scandal breaks because you've had the audacity to voice an opinion, or to maybe say perhaps we shouldn't do it this way, perhaps we should change things. It's a little bit crazy. So obviously thanks a lot for upvoting that, and I'm hoping in future to be able to do a bit more work around this. But you should all be commended. I think it's deplorable what's happening to the Kotakuinaction subreddit at the moment, where it's getting lumped in with genuine hate subreddits and genuine racist subreddits. I think it's pathetic. I think it just shows how far this progressive left collection of nutters are willing to go, that you guys have absolutely nothing in common with any of that, and yet you're being wrongly mislabeled, which is quite ironic given how precious they are about their pronouns and other such things. So just keep up the good work. You are the closest thing we have to a media watchdog right now. It's great to see aware and kind of active people that do care about ethics in journalism, and I hope you keep it up, and I certainly hope to be a part of it somewhere down the road. So thanks for watching. Hopefully see you on the next video.